For years, I've had to listen to them say, death to America, right? They say, death to America, death to Israel. And what I'm referring to is, when I talk about civilization, it'll be much different because their military will be totally gone. It's pretty much gone now.
President Trump doubling down on threats to finish off Iran after peace talks this weekend failed. For more, let's go to Daily Wire co-founder and host of the Ben Shapiro Show, Ben Shapiro. Thanks so much, Ben, for being with us.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Of course. So the president this morning, basically saying very firmly that Iran thought that they could negotiate something here that was a total red line for the U.S., and now he is going to take some serious action, blocking off the Strait of Hormuz, and the troops are ready, locked and loaded, to finish off Iran at the time that he says. But realistically, if the fighting resumes, how long does the U.S. military have to finish what's left of Iran, as he put it? Because there are these votes coming up in the House and Senate maybe next week. And here's what one House Republican said on Friday.
60 days, I think Congress does need to have a much stronger discussion about what happens next, because members of Congress from both parties do not want to see this war continue. Right. I think the reality is that there's already a law on the books. And let me also remind
the Iranians will be looking. The Iranians will be looking at what's going on. They use it as propaganda.
So Nicole Malliotakis makes the point that, Obama carried out strikes in Libya for 7 months. I think it was Clinton also passed the 60-day mark. Democrats obviously now applying a double standard. But if these votes come to the floor, as I was talking about Senator Sheehy, the margins are so tight, it's not impossible to imagine that it passes in at least one chamber. Are you concerned about those votes at all?
I'm not particularly concerned about those votes because even if it passes in the House, it's unlikely to pass in the Senate. Even if it passes in the Senate, it's likely to be challenged in the courts. Every single president, Democrat and Republican, since 1973, which is when the War Powers Act was approved by Congress, every single president has claimed, I think correctly, that the War Powers Act is unconstitutional. And so the idea that is going to force the president to withdraw troops from the general area, because again, we do not have troops that are currently on the ground in Iran, to withdraw troops from the general region, I think that's a very long putt. I don't think that that's going to be the chief obstacle to the president's success here.
Yeah, and I think it's a non-binding resolution anyway. But the concern is, would that optically undermine what the president is trying to do? Malliotakis makes the point that the Iranians would certainly use that as propaganda. But even through a domestic lens, does that make it tough for Republicans heading into the midterms? You had past week, some big conservative media voices making clear their opposition to it. The president now says those people are not MAGA at all. He posted, "I know why Tucker Carlson, Megyn Kelly, Candace Owens, and Alex Jones have all been fighting me for years, especially by the fact that they think it's wonderful for Iran, the #1 state sponsor of terror, to have a nuclear weapon. Because they have one thing in common, low IQs. They're not MAGA, they're losers just trying to latch on to MAGA." Those people, though, do have considerable social followings. How big of an issue do you take this to be for the Republican base?
I don't think it's a major issue for the Republican base. I think the president is exactly right to call this out for what it is, which is people who have fringe audiences. They have large numbers, but fringe audiences in terms of the broader overall Republican audience. Multiple polls have shown over the course of the last month and a half that the president has 80 to 90% support inside the Republican Party for his actions in Iran. There was a poll maybe 2 weeks ago that showed that the support for people like Tucker Carlson and Megyn Kelly versus the president is 6%. So I think that the idea that these folks are going to be able to undermine broad-scale support for a war that will reach its terminus sometime in the next couple of months, I think that's insane. And the attempt to turn this into a referendum on the midterm elections, number one, ignores the fact there are a lot of other factors in a midterm election. And number two, we will go through about 1,000 news cycles between now and November when the election actually takes place.
Mm-hmm. Worth pointing out, it's not just Republicans that are sort of wrestling with a portion of their base over this war. You had moderate Democrats getting attacked by progressives. Listen to this. Oh, I guess we don't have that sound, but I'll describe it to you. It was Ro Khanna basically sounding off on the DNC voting down a resolution condemning AIPAC dark money spending, as he put it. The Democratic base had a huge anti-Israel problem that they confronted in the 2024 election. But do you think at all that this is a both parties' issue at this point?
I think it's mainly a Democratic Party issue. I do think that there is a wing of the conservative base that has become essentially the grievance party, mirroring a lot of the concerns of the left, seeing politics through the same grievance-based conspiratorial lens, suggesting, for example, as Candace Owens did over the weekend, that the president is a slave to Israel or that Israel is manipulating this president. The president, as anyone who has watched him for the last decade knows, makes his own decisions. And the conspiratorial horse crap that is being promoted by Tucker Carlson or Megyn Kelly or Candace Owens or Alex Jones, that the president is acting at the behest of a foreign nation, is nonsense. The president knows it's nonsense. So does the Republican base. So
much of that, gains traction on social media. What do you do to stop terrible narratives like that from taking hold and changing people's minds and informing their thought about things?
I mean, obviously, I think that the algorithmic disconnect is quite real. You see it particularly on X, but you also see it on TikTok and other social media. People need to touch grass. Go talk to the people you go to church with, and what you will find out is that most of those people agree with the President of the United States. The vast majority of conservatives have agreed for 50 years that the Iranian regime is a threat to the United States, to its allies, to the region, and to the world. And this president is making the bravest foreign policy move of my lifetime and actually keeping a promise that he made back in 1980 that he would take on the Iranian regime if ever he got the power. Again, this conspiratorial notion that the president switched his opinion here ignores 4+ decades of the president being perfectly consistent on this issue. And as per our usual arrangement, only this president had the balls to actually keep the promises that other presidents have made.
And the Iranians themselves admitting they had enough nuclear material to build 11 bombs. There's that factor out there as well. So, all right, Ben Shapiro, great talking to you, sir. Appreciate it very much.
Be sure to like and subscribe for all the Fox News latest on YouTube and catch full shows streaming now on Fox One.